For anybody who came to Storm but was unable to attend, we got Next, Youth Leadership by Youth for Youth. I'd invite you to check out this video by Martinez. It's not only a video for young people and teenagers, it's really a video for teens and adult youth workers alike who are ready and willing to surrender real leadership to young people who God has called to make meaningful change in the world around them. All morning, and my name is in the brochure and stuff, but when they asked me to do the student leadership event, my first response was, but I'm not a student. Right? Why would you ask a 36-year-old to do a student leadership event when there are students who God has raised up for leadership? Right? Why turn to an adult to lead a student leadership event? Isn't that kind of contradictory? If it's a student leadership workshop, my preference would be to see a student actually lead the student leadership event. That's just, for me, that feels a little bit more consistent. And so as we talked and they asked if I would do this, it was a real privilege for me to recommend a student leader that I've known since she was 12 years old, who is a dynamic, wonderful young woman, but beyond being a wonderful, dynamic young woman, she is an amazingly gifted leader who has allowed God to use her and shape her for quite a while. I first met Eden at a Christmas party that the youth group was having. She was the guest of one of our regulars, and I don't even remember what the activity was, but we had some goofy youth group game that was going on. And at the end of it, I was the youth pastor at the time, and at the end of it, each group had to nominate one of their members to represent them publicly. And this first timer who didn't know anybody before she came volunteered to be the spokesperson for the group. And she came up on the stage and said whatever she had to say, and I don't have any recollection of what she said or what the activity even was that she was representing. But I remember sitting back thinking, God's got a plan for this young lady. And whether she ever comes back to my youth group or not, God's doing something in her. And I am proud to say that now at 22, she is the director of that youth ministry. She's a senior in college, so she's still a student. She qualifies as a student leader, and she's leading the youth ministry that I had been drafted to begin when I was about her age, a long time ago. And so it's a real privilege to co-present and to introduce Eden Martinez. Before she comes though, the one little nugget I'm going to give all of you. I was about 13 or 14 at a youth retreat. How many of you have ever been on a youth retreat? Sure. Anybody ever go to a youth camp? Yeah, or a retreat, an overnight, some kind of place where youth group kids go to have a good time, get away from mom and dad, get away from church, get away from our environment, and just reflect. Well, I went on a youth retreat, and like most of the teens at this youth retreat, I went away mainly because I wanted to get away. Not because I wanted to sit in services or spend a whole lot of time reading the Word or getting to know God. I went away because I wanted a break, and it felt like it would be a lot of fun, right? So I go away, but the youth pastor who was leading the retreat challenged us on Saturday morning, said before we do anything, any of the free time, any of the services, any of the fun time, each one of you, he said to us, I want you to take your Bible and go find a quiet place for half an hour and read your word and pray and see what God says. Give God an opportunity to speak to you. And when he said that, that felt like he had flipped the script, right? I wanted to play. I didn't want to go pray. I wanted to have fun. I didn't want to have to use my brain and engage the Word. But he required us all to do this. And so grudgingly, I went and I got my Bible. And I hadn't read it in a while, so it wasn't like I had an obvious place to open it up to. But I knew that there was a guy in the New Testament named Timothy who was a young person that an older person wrote a letter to. And the letter was recorded. And so I went to the letter that the old guy wrote to the young guy. It's called 1 Timothy. And as I read 1 Timothy in this block of time, there was a verse that jumped off the pages and grabbed me and broke me that day. And it's a verse in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. You've probably all heard it before if you've spent any amount of time in youth group. I had heard it. I had listened to sermons from it. I had read devotionals about it. Never did it grab my attention like it did that day. And it said, let no one look down on you because you're young, but be an example to the believer in word and faith, in conduct and hope and in purity. And I remember reading that day, saying, but I'm only a teenager. I'm not in leadership. I don't have a title. I'm not responsible for anything. And I came back to the words and said, let no one look down on you because you're young. Don't let an adult patronize you. Say, you can do it someday. Right? Just relegate us to the junior congregation with the junior Holy Spirit, the babysitting service. We don't want you in the big time service, so we send you off to the youth group service where you can be kids and you can do silly stuff. And as long as you're not bothering us, and as long as you don't break too much furniture, we'll give you your space. I reread the passage and it said, that's looking down on me because I'm young. God invites me to a different story. And the story He invites me to participate in is one in which I'm an example, but I'm not qualified to be an example. But it's right there in the Word, and it grabbed me, and it inspired me, and it prepared me to do what I'm about to do now, which is stop talking, get out of the way, so that the student leader in the mix can do what she's been called to do. So Eden, come on up.
We Got Next is the title of this youth leadership course, and it's all about the understanding that, like me, I had next in Abounding Grace Youth Ministry. I was the next one to come up, but I'm 22 years old. What qualifies me to run a youth ministry? But it's the same thing that qualified Timothy to step into the ministry at that young age. So we're going to move into the slides. It's kind of funny because that's me, and I don't remember when that picture was taken. It was a long time ago. But I just want to give you guys an overview of kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start with the today, the right now. Where are you right now in your ministry? And we're going to move to how leaders emerge and what the context of that is. Then we're going to look at the future. But the key part at the end is going to be, how are you guys going to be ministers when you leave here? And what does that look like? What's the plan? But let's start with today. What is the reality of you? So everyone got a paper, pen, something, or the packet that was given to you guys? Hopefully you came here, if you have a paper, pen. If you don't have a pen, I don't have one for you, but hopefully you have a great memory, and you'll be able to just store everything up there. So understanding the context, we're just going to begin with a little bit of self-assessment. And we're going to start with this basic icebreaker. There are two categories. So on the left side of your paper, or however you want to do it, however you feel most comfortable, I want you guys to pick 3 words that describe what it means to be at-risk youth. And on the other side, I want you to pick 3 words that define a student leader for you. Who said that? I'm sorry. Worldly, at-risk youth, to be worldly.
They're usually lonely.
Lonely, at-risk youth are considered to be people who are lonely, maybe isolate themselves, they're putting themselves off to the side. Selfish. I'm so sorry, what was that? Compromising, they're leading compromising lifestyles. Unprotected, that's referring to sex. Is that what you're referring to? Oh, I just said something slanderous. All right, I'm sorry. All right, no, moving on. Could you just unpack that a little bit?
What I meant by unprotected, like student leaders protected because they have to lead people over them that tries to lead them in the right way.
So they have no resources. They have no leaders in their lives who are getting involved in making an investment and trying to empower them. Anything else for at-risk? We're going to close up at-risk. In the back?
Easily persuaded to do things that
Easily persuaded, easily influenced. So they're not leaders, basically, at this at-risk column. Those are the beliefs. So can I get maybe 2 or 3 words about student leaders? Hopefully you guys have, as student leaders, you have a few more words for that. In the back?
Service.
Service?
In order to become a good leader, you gotta be a servant.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great to have a title, but it's even better to understand that Jesus Christ's primary title on earth was that of a servant. That was his title, what he identified himself with. He took the lowest position.
Strong.
I'm sorry.
Strong.
strong, courageous, confident, humble. We're gonna get into humility later. Patient. These are all great words. Now we're gonna move into kind of closing out this icebreaker, is because there's a reality that if you're in this room, it's because someone believes that you moved from one column to the other. At one point you were an at-risk youth and you moved to the student leader column. That's what we're going to try to get grab our understanding today. How is that possible? And how can you guys be doing that in your own areas of influence? The word says in Revelation 12:1, we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Your story is the most powerful thing you have. Your story speaks volumes. Your testimony speaks volumes. And it doesn't have to be the 30-minute Sermon on the Mount. It can be the one thing that how you got saved that really meets someone in their situation, that helps them understand. And a lot of times we miss it because we lose the power of our story, because we're living in this world and we get so easily swayed by the things that are going on, and we totally forget how powerful that story can be. But if you look at the story of the gospel, the story of Jesus has survived 2,000 years. Imagine if your one story can transform just one life, 2 lives, 3 lives, how powerful it could be. And now to this bigger question, how did you move from the at-risk column? I know you can't see it, but how did you move from the at-risk column to that student leadership column? What is your story? If you guys got some brave souls. Anybody? All right, I'm gonna throw myself out there. How I moved. I mean, it started with great mentorship. It started with great leadership. But it started with a lot of humility and a lot of sacrifice, because at the end of the day, I'm only 22. In a lot of people's eyes, when I go into my college and I tell them I'm a Christian, their mindset is I'm missing the best years of my life. I'm missing the best years of my life to party. And I'm thinking in my head, dude, are you crazy? You have no idea how much I was missing when I was in the world. And I'm not saying that to be cute. I'm not saying that to be preachy or religious. I was missing out on the life that Jesus had called me for. I consider, I've been a Christian since I was 12 in some way, shape, or form. But when I really hit the height of my peak with my relationship with God, I was about 18 years old. And I consider all those years wasted years. Years that I really think in my head, man, if I would have been serving God as strongly as I am now, then by the age of 22, what miraculous wonders could I have been doing? What visions could I have been casting? Because the word also says that as young people, He's longing to give us vision. That's what we're called for, to have a vision in this city, to have a vision in our communities. So I think people say that as young people, He's longing to give us vision. That's what we're called for, to have a vision in this city, to have a vision in our communities. So I think people say that to me and I'm like, dude, you have no idea like how much I'm not missing because of the things God has me doing. Because I'm not just hanging out on Friday night, I'm changing lives in the name of Jesus, giving Him the glory. And that's what you got to understand about your story. That's how powerful that, the simple story from 12 to 19, how important that story was. So even if you're not comfortable sharing your story here, I really do want, encourage you guys to take some time. Recall on your story. What is your testimony? Maybe you've been serving the Lord all your life and you were raised in church, but when was that moment when you encountered Jesus that your life was not the same? When was that moment that brought you to this class that now you're saying, man, I don't just want to be here, I don't just want to be in the church, but I want to be a leader. I want to transform lives in His name. I want people, when they look at me, I want them to see Jesus. So really consider what that transformational moment was, because I'm pretty strongly convinced that all of us have had it, that Paul moment when we're walking down the road and it's like we go blind because we see Jesus, we see God in this totally new light and begins to understand His plan for us. So hopefully you have it, and I really do encourage you, go back, consider your lives, consider every moment. And I kind of shared my student leadership story, but I really want to focus on this student leadership story. The story of God Belongs to My City. Who's heard of God Belongs to My City? Who has a t-shirt? Who's seen a video? Who likes Sea Lights tracks? Amen to that. So, God Belongs to My City. This was birthed out of student leaders being who God called them to be. And it started with this ad, 1,200,000 people. And beyond the 2,000 people now, this isn't God belongs in my city has happened around the nation already. That's a really, really big thing. And it started with people just saying with student leaders just saying, we're not just going to sit down. We need to do something. All to say that something like that you don't have to be a youth pastor to do it. You just have to understand the call of God on your life. And it's not just about sitting in this class listening to me. It's about what's going to happen when you leave this class. Because it's great if you paid your little, $30, $40 for the ticket to come to Reload, but it'd be even greater if something happened in your city that was transformational. Something happened in your block that was transformational. Maybe it's not God belongs in my city. Maybe it's you going into the laundromat and washing people's clothes just to meet people. I want to bless you because Jesus would want to bless you, and that's what I want to do for you. And I'm going to kind of get into that understanding later, but I just want you to wrap your head around that. Anything's possible when you work through Jesus, when you have Him living through you. Here's some other really cool pictures. I'm right there. That's me. I just made that up, but I thought it would be funny. Tough crowd, but I like you guys. Wow. All right. This is definitely something I want you guys to consider. As students, where are you guys spending the most time? This is kind of the average, but can you guys agree with this? The top says school, work, and church. And basically, school is the priority here. School is statistically, school takes up the most of your time. Are all of you in school at some level? You don't have to be in high school, you don't have to be in college, some level? All right, we got some students. We got some people, I'm gonna get your applications, it's okay. All right. Understand the call of God in your life. And it's not just about sitting in this class listening to me, it's about what's gonna happen when you leave this class. Because it's great if you paid your little, $30, $40 for the ticket to come to Reload, but it'd be even greater if something happened in your city that was transformational. Something happened in your block that was transformational. Maybe it's not God belongs in my city. Maybe it's you going into the laundromat. So this is all to kind of assess some of the stuff that's going on in the next slide. Not that slide. That's for the future. This is the leadership assessment part. And I know what you're saying. Maybe you're not a leader. Maybe you're just a student. Maybe you need to start understanding that God has a call upon your life, and you're not just here by accident. But God wants you to be a leader. Where are you guys spending the most time? First question. Any answers? Where do you guys spend the most time? School? Is that statistically right? Okay, so I'll skip over it because they were right. In school, because this is where you're spending the most time, as opposed to church, because on that last slide it said that we only spend between 5 to 10 hours in church. But we're spending an average of 6 times 5, that's about 30 hours a week. We're spending that in school. If you're a college student, it might be somewhere between 13 and 15 hours a week. If that's where you're spending the most time, are you utilizing the space to model student leadership? Just by a show of hands. Does anyone utilize their school to model student leadership? Do people know you're a Christian in your school? Basic question. It's all right. People know you're a Christian in your school. All right, we'll go back. Is there a Christian club in your school? No, there isn't a Christian club in your school. All right, huh? You have one? All right, we got some Christian clubs. All right, let's see what else. How have you as a Christian utilized that space to transform the lives in that space? Do you minister to people in that space regularly? And I don't mean cheesy minister. Here's a track. I know this track will save your life. It's not about your relation. It's not about me showing you Jesus. It's about you reading this. But I mean, how many people are you in relationship with that you're showing them Jesus on a regular basis? Anybody got some relationships like that in their school? We got one brave soul in the back, 2, 3, 4. Can I get 5? 5, 6, 1 in the back, 7? No, okay. All right, we got some. Who is in your school, in this space that you're utilizing, or maybe not even in your school? Just consider the entire scope of your leadership. Who is following you? Now I want you to. Can anyone answer that? No, she's like, someone's following me, I don't know who though. All right. Who is following you? But this is the question we're really going to unpack a little bit. Why are they following you? Who is following you maybe in your church? Maybe it's just your sister. Like for me, for a while, my sister was my biggest ministry. Like that was it. It was just me and my sister, and my job was to get her to understand God. And that's cool, but outside of that scope, is there anyone else who's following you or looking to you? Or maybe some people that you don't even know are looking to you in your school. And those are usually the people that are like maybe making fun of you because you're a Christian, or trying to test the waters and see how far your beliefs really go. How far are you really willing to carry out that belief in God. Do you curse in school? Just curious. Anybody curse in school? Anybody curse in school? I tell my kids all the time, they're like, yo, I've been trying to get this kid to come to church. And I work in an after-school program where a lot of the youth in my ministry actually go to. So I go there and I see them cursing, and they're like, man, I'm really trying to bring this kid to church. I'm like, if they didn't see you cursing every week, maybe they would be there. Really, you ever think about that? And I'm not trying to put the pressure on you. But the thing is, when you see someone and they're talking about this leadership and God and how transforming He is, when you're transformed, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not the same, right? Something's different about you. And I'm not saying it's just about this one thing. I'm saying it's about everything. Jesus comes to transform your whole life, not just the parts you're comfortable with. And I know maybe this is, for some of you, this is like stuff you were planning on doing when you were like 25 years old. But it's all right. But maybe this is stuff for the future. Or maybe some of it, Jesus is calling you right now to start considering how you can start changing your life even right now. So who is following you and why? And even more so, where are you leading these people? These people that are following you. Does anybody have, and I had asked this before, but anybody have at least one person that they could think of off the top of your head that's following you, that considers you a leader? Show of hands. Show of hands, one person. All right. If you don't, that's cool. But I will say this: someone may be following you and you don't even know it, just because that's happened to me before. Just my experience. The minute you say you're a Christian, there's someone looking at you, which means there's a chance that they could be following you. Where are you leading those people to? Some of those people who raised your hands, where are you guys leading those people to? Who are you leading those people to? You leading them to church? Who said that?
God.
Church? Church? You said church, someone said God. All right. It's great to lead someone to church, but what happens if you're not leading them to Jesus? How long is that experience in church going to last? Just out of, that's a bold question to put out there, not something many people say, but it's the truth. And the last question is, have you limited where people experience your leadership the most? And this is really to consider your time basis. If you know that you're spending maybe 30 hours in school, maybe only 15 hours in school, but you know that is where you're spending the most time, and you're not living out your leadership there, what does that mean about your leadership? What does that mean about the lives that you're praying to transform? Are you able to transform lives? What is your first ministry? Jesus, when he was living on this earth, his first ministry was the people that were closest to him, the people that he spent time with the most. I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, the people who I spent time with the most were in my high school. They were my friends. They were the people I had lunch with. Those were the people that I had influence over. How are you using that space to influence them and to function as a leader? If that's what you want to do, if you're in this class and you believe that, then what is the extent of your ministry in that space? And it doesn't necessarily mean a Christian club, even though Christian clubs are great, because I think it gives you a good space. But even beyond that, how are you showing people Jesus in your school? How are you serving? If you think about what Jesus did and who Jesus was, it wasn't just about every sermon, it wasn't just about every preaching, it was about every time he had dinner with someone. Every time he did a miracle, it was about every time he met their needs. So what are the needs in your school? If that's where you spend the most time, what are the needs in your school that you're meeting? These are kind of just some statistics to kind of address, and this is in New York City. This is where I'm from, but at a bottom line, this stuff really is real around the United States. How many people from New York? How many people from New Jersey? Got a lot of New Jersey. I lived in New Jersey once for one day. I miss it every day. I pray, take me back. 486,265 children live in poverty. I don't know about you, but this is I wanted to go through, I don't want to really stick through them. Hopefully you can look at this. If you have the paper, look through it and maybe see what's most real to you. But that one was the one that was most real to me. Because when I think about children in poverty, if you ever walk down the street, if you walk down in New York, it's a very normal thing to see a poor person laying on the street and that's their home. And you walking down the street is you literally walking into their apartment. And I don't mean that's just the reality of it in New York City. But when I think of 486,265 children living in poverty, think about what does children mean to you? Children means kids. And think about those kids living in poverty. These are the realities of the place that we're called to transform. That means Eden Martinez, who lives in New York City, I'm called to transform that. That one day that number would be 0. And I'm not praying that like as a joke, I'm praying that in faith, seriously, that one day that number would be 0. But as I pray that, the prayer is, okay, what can I do to minimize that number? What am I doing to meet those children? If that's what breaks my heart. As far as schools are concerned, because this is kind of where we've already established, most of you are really spending a lot of your time. These are the statistics. If you have your paper, this is definitely one slide I would encourage you to look at. Because this is one of these things that's just a little scary. Half of people in public school will not graduate. I don't know if you know anything about, the job crisis and the financial crisis going on in this country, but it's very serious. Before it used to be, you couldn't get you couldn't get a job without a decent job without a college diploma. Now you can't get a job without a master's, some positions. That's how serious it's gotten. So imagine what happens to the people who are not even graduating from high school. What is their reality? What are their families going to look like when they can't put food on the table? The U.S. #1 in incarceration, that's New York City. We're putting people in prison more than anyone else. We have more people going into the prison system than anyone else, let me phrase that. 60 to 70% of 1.1 million New York City public school students are not proficient in math or reading. And I know, like we say, math is one of these things that's I'm never going to do math. You are at least going to use addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Imagine if you were incapable of doing that, how you would function in the real world. And reading comprehension is just something we use for every job. Every job, you got to read something. Even if it's just your trainer's manual. So imagine people that are going into that workforce who don't even have that skill. 60 to 70% of kids. 60 to 70%, that's like 6 out of 10, right? That's 6 out of 10 kids. How many guys do you have at least 10 kids in your class? That means 6 of them, possibly. This is, and I know it's exaggerating, that's not my friends, I don't hang out with those people, but this is what the statistics are saying, so there's some truth in this. And this is kind of the second part, moving out of that first part, moving out of kind of the negative and kind of this leadership assessment process and where our position is. What happens when leaders emerge? Leaders rise above circumstances, yet operate in a given context. Leaders emerge from and in real life. You guys are in real situations, you guys are in real schools, you guys aren't just reading these statistics, you're a part of them. Not per se you fall into them, but I mean you're living within this circumstance. You're in the school system. You can tell that, you can probably identify some of that 60 to 70% in your own classrooms. You probably know some of those kids. And this is the thing, even out of that, leaders can rise up. Even out of those situations, leaders can rise up. Earlier we talked about you moved at some point from that at-risk column to that student leaders column. That means someone believed in you. Someone knew that it was possible. For some of you, that means you believed in yourself. That means you believed in yourself enough to keep pushing you forward, and maybe you found 1 or 2 people to influence you and push you forward. But that's the thing. Leadership, this is possible. It's not like a pipe dream. It can happen. One of the major ways leaders emerge is by speaking up and doing rightly. And this is something that's really important to me, because you'll see this a lot when you talk to people. You ever ask them what do you think about Christians? What are some of the words you hear? Hypocrite, right? That's the primary one. It's like everyone has the same Christian dictionary, Christian Association dictionary. It's all about we're quote unquote hypocrites. And that's the thing. It's about speaking up, but it's about doing rightly. It's about living your life. That joke I made about the student earlier, that's true. What would happen if he was living rightly and transforming? And it's not about taking a finger and pointing it at someone and saying, you're not living this way. It's about just living your life the best you can and trusting that people are going to see Jesus in that, because you're living that disciplined life. Proverbs 31 verses 8 through 9 says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. That means you guys are the voice. Leaders are the voice. Students are the voice. You are the voice in your schools. You are you're the voice. Some of you are the voice in your homes. Some of you are the voice in your workplace. But wherever that is, you're speaking up for someone who cannot speak up for themselves. For whatever God has called you to reach. Maybe that's youth. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's some other ministry. But that doesn't mean you're not called to do it. You're more than called, you're more than capable. And this is just something really to consider in everyday life as you consider this kind of process of leadership development. Are you leading or are you following? In your classroom, some of you, in your classrooms, in your schools, what are you doing? And I'm asking you seriously to, like, for a minute, be honest with yourself, because this is a question I had to ask myself at some point in my life. Am I leading or am I following? Not just in school, but even in ministry. Am I leading people or am I following? And if I'm leading them, who am I leading them to? Am I leading them to me? Because that's the thing. I can lead. People can follow you for so long, but it gets tiring because I don't have anything to give them that's going to sustain them. They may be entertained for a while. They were talking earlier about entertainment. Church can become very entertaining. But you notice the people who are in church for entertainment don't stay there very long. They don't experience Jesus in a real way. Their limit is just that entertainment. That's the thing. Are we leading or are we following? In our schools, in our ministries. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." In other words, this is, let your light shine, not for you, but for God. Understand, you want to serve God, then just be a Christian. Be what you believe that to be. However you've defined that for yourself at this point in your life, are you living that out and are you letting your light shine? In the Bible, it also says we're called to be the salt and light of the earth. Are you being salty to the earth? Where does the salt belong? Like, really, when you have salt, where would you put salt on? Any ideas? Food, right? What kind of food? Chicken, French fries. Okay. Now, would the French fries be any good without salt?
Yes.
With no salt, seriously? Alright. Would the chicken be good without any salt? No. Chicken would not. Alright, let's back up. Chicken would not be good without any salt. Alright, I don't know. You guys are going crazy. You guys, let's bring it back. Chicken would not be good without any salt. Now, your world, if you're called to be the salt and light of the earth, that means the salt belongs in the earth. The salt doesn't. The same way the salt belongs on the piece of chicken because it's meant to give it flavor. And when you're the salt and light of the earth, you're giving the world flavor. You're giving them this understanding of Jesus. You're showing them Jesus. When you're the light, you're lighting them. You're leading them somewhere, not to you, but to Jesus Christ. This is the Great Commission. This is a leadership development mandate, not just because it says on the slide. It's funny because I think a lot of people look at the Great Commission and think, wow, this is the great suggestion. This is not for me. This is for everyone. Jesus has called everyone who follows him to follow this Great Commission. Can somebody read this? Anybody? Yeah, go. She was just kidding. You gotta encourage her to read it. Give her a clap. Give her a round of applause. You can read it. You can read it. Alright, go ahead. Here, you can read the title? No, you can just read the verse.
Then Jesus came.
No, that was my side note. No, here's the thing with the Bible. The Bible is not just a textbook. When you look at the Bible, it's not just speaking about things that were possible then. The Bible was meant to give us hope about the future. The Bible was meant to give us hope that these things were possible. In the Bible, Jesus says, you're going to do greater things than I did. What would happen if everyone in this room started doing greater things than Jesus did? And he wasn't saying it like you're going to be greater than me. He was saying it, I empowered you. I'm leaving you with my Holy Spirit. I know it's possible for you to go and baptize all nations in the name of the Father because I did it on earth. I did it on earth. He died so you could do it, so you could have this opportunity to share, so that you would all be qualified to do it. So it doesn't matter if you have a title, it doesn't matter if you have a degree in a ministry. What matters is you have a heart for people. You have a heart for the people for the lost, for the broken, for the people that can't speak up for themselves. So in the context of this verse, this is the Great Commission. How are you taking this Great Commission and living it out in your own life, in your own community, in your own school? Whatever area of influence you have. You consider Jesus' disciples. Every disciple Jesus made, they became a leader. And when you consider leadership, there's no age limit to leadership. Leadership starts when you embrace it. When you say, God, I want to serve. Jesus was a leader, right? Jesus was a leader? Just to make sure. Maybe I read the wrong Bible. No, Jesus was a leader. Jesus was a leader. But Jesus, his primary title, like I said in the beginning, he was a servant. So how does leadership start? How are we serving? Leadership starts when we embrace this serving principle. this is just a side note, but the world's best companies are realizing that no matter what business they are in, their real business is building leaders. This is like Fortune 500 companies realizing this. And it's not just about having people in a workplace and paying them. It's about how long your company is going to sustain itself after you're not around. And the only way to do that is to build leaders from within that company. What does it mean to be a star? Some of you know stars. You all watch television?
Yeah.
No? Some of are the holier folks don't watch television. I'm with you guys, never watch television. I'm joking. Huh? As a celebrity in school, and this is kind of in your own areas of influence, but seriously, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a star? Popular?
Everyone likes you.
Well known?
Everyone likes you.
Everyone loves you? Important? Stars? Someone you look up to? I know exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I know. No, I get what you're saying. Or anything else? What does it mean to be a star? Now, in the context of these places, by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross, which at that time, death on a cross was like the worst type of death. Not just physically was this the worst type of death, but people who were hung on a cross, they were considered criminals. He hung on the cross with I don't even want to say it because I feel like I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm going to say thieves. But he was standing next to criminals, to people who associate with. So he humbled himself to do this for us. And that's what he's asking. He's not saying you to die on a cross, but he's saying maybe you need to sacrifice yourself in your school a little bit. Maybe if you're super public about your Christianity, you need to be super public about your ability to live out those beliefs. Have you embraced that? Maybe it means you gotta stop cursing. Maybe it means you gotta stop getting into fights. Maybe it means whatever it means for you. For me in high school, it meant I needed to stop getting into fights because I was in high school. I was always picking a fight because I had a really bad attitude. I had some weird situations when I was a kid, and it had these walls up, and I didn't want to let people in. So whatever it means in your school, that's something you got to embrace. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And what's amazing is even Jesus gave glory to God the Father. He pointed people to God. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. How many people have heard, like, I know my generation was Generation X, so like a warped and crooked generation. That's what people associate us with. Like we're this generation of people who only spend time on the internet, who are mad selfish, who are totally indulged in Xbox, PlayStation, Facebook, and all of those things that are like fully entertaining to us, but not people that are transforming lives. And the word is saying, no, I have a purpose for you, I have a plan for you. I lost my place. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service, coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. And just to go back to this, then you will shine among them like stars. What did we say about stars earlier? Stars are noticeable, they're influential. People pay attention to stars, whether they're celebrities. That's the thing. When you live out these principles, you shine like stars because you're just that different. You look at Jesus, people paid attention to him because he was saying something that they hadn't heard before, and he wasn't afraid to say it. He was coming in and transforming, and though he said it with respect, he came in and said it boldly with confidence, and that's the thing. We've all been, God's given all of us, he has a purpose for every single one of us. So the question is, what is his purpose for you, and how are you using that purpose to shine out like stars within it? And this is the thing, he called us to be a different kind of star. Verses 5-7 say, your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider it equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. People thought it was a little, not people, his disciples thought it was crazy when he got down to wash their feet. That was a crazy thing because that was the servant's job. The slave in the house would get down and do that. And he said, no, I need to do this because this is my mandate on earth. I've come to serve. And even more, I've come to show you how to serve and to understand this is your job as a leader to serve. And that was one of the ways Jesus stood out. And it says, do everything without complaining or arguing so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. The word of life, the Bible, the word of life. This thing that we kind of like totally like, miscommunicate, sometimes take advantage of, sometimes like, I don't know about you guys, like I carry my Bible with me everywhere, but I wasn't always like that. I used to be the in the closet Christian, and in the closet Christians. It was just me, high school, 14 to 18, that's it, then stop. But I was 14 to 18 in the closet Christian because I didn't want people to know in the areas where I had the most influence how Jesus had come into my life. I wasn't willing to share that. But it says here in the Bible, do everything without complaining or arguing. How are we in our relationships? Are we complaining about, or in our servitude, are we complaining about the level of service that we have to do? Are we complaining about, you ever complained about washing someone's feet? Some of us would really complain about that, like seriously. No, you look at like your best friend, you're like, I do not want to wash your feet, I have seen those feet, I will pray over them, but I will not wash them. But that's the thing, and I say that to say this, a lot of times we pray for the solution, but we're not willing to get down and do the work that it takes to solve the problem, right? God, do something great. And he's like, I will do something great when you wake up and do it. I'm not calling the mega church to do it, I'm calling you. Because you're in your school, you're in your city. You're the one that needs to go and transform. And that's what it means when we gotta shine like stars, and God has pushed us to embrace this calling of not just being minimal, certainly not just shining in the places we're comfortable. It's really easy to go to church and be a leader. Right? In church it's easy because in church everyone is playing, not everyone, but a lot of people are playing church. Everyone's following the rules, everyone's listening. You get people, like I got your attention right now because you either pay for the class or, but that's the thing, it's really easy here. But what happens when you step outside of the door into the world, and it's like one of these things where you gotta kind of put yourself on the line for it. Jesus put everything on the line. He put his life on the line. He became obedient even to death. What is God calling you to be obedient with? And the amazing thing is God doesn't say, you need to give up your life. He just says you need to give up your comfort zone. You need to be a little bit uncomfortable to shine like stars. And when you look at the star in the Bible, when Jesus was born, the wise men were led by the star in the sky that they saw. And most who saw it didn't get it, but those who did understand the star's significance. In other words, not everyone understood that that's where Jesus was going to be. The wise men understood that when they followed that star, it wasn't about the star, it was about who the star was leading them to. It was leading the wise men to Jesus. It was leading the wise men to Jesus. So the question some of you may need to ask yourselves today is, what am I leading people to? Are people following me? Or am I the star that's leading them to Jesus? Is my light shining bright enough that it's leading them to Jesus? And it's not about its brilliance, it's about who you're leading people to. And that's the amazing thing. Jesus says, come as you are. And that's for you guys, but that's also for the people who you're leading. It's not about trying to change them. It's about you leading them and just living your life as a Christian and leading them to Jesus, leading them to his word, leading them to understanding that this is possible. You're doing it, so they can do it too. And the Christ model is essentially live among the community. Jesus Christ lived in the community that he served and he preached in, and he understood their ways. He understood what it was to be a religious leader of the time. Jesus chose leaders from that section. His leaders weren't people in government. These leaders weren't like these super high people. They were fishermen. They were the average Joe. You look to your right and your left, they probably looked a lot like some of you. That's who they were. Jesus ministered broadly but invested in few. In other words, he went out and he fed the 5,000, but he sat with the 12 and he was teaching those 12 disciples to deliver the word even when he was gone. They were going to be able to be ministers of the word, teachers of the word, doers of the word. They were performing miraculous signs and wonders. Jesus empowered leadership even before they were ready. The examples in Luke 10, but even if you consider some of just the examples throughout the Bible, I mean, every task that Jesus gave the disciples, they somehow managed to mess it up. They came and they were always coming back to him, you know, and he had to reteach them. He had to reteach them and show them again. And that's the thing. It's not about being ready, it's about being willing. The 12 disciples weren't perfect, but they did want to serve. You know, they didn't come from the best situations, they weren't the richest, but they really wanted to see God's name lifted high. They really wanted to serve in their community. They really wanted to see change. Jesus trusted the leaders he groomed to do greater works than he did. And that's the thing, this isn't just true, you know, 2,000 years ago, this is true right now. He's trusted you to do greater works. What are the greater works that he's trusted you to do? And a lot of times we look at that and say, well, if I'm not healing someone, you know, then that's not a greater work. But the reality is, even in that one encounter, I mean, in the Bible it says, when one person is saved, there's an entire celebration in heaven. So that one person is a great work. Leading that one person, living as a star, leading them to Jesus, that's a great work. That's something we're all called to do. And this is part 2, and I feel like, did I finish really quick? 20 minutes more. Wow. All right, I don't want to get into part 2, because then I'm going to run out of things to talk about later. But I mean, maybe this is a good time to start just asking you guys some questions. Close out with the leading change, and also kind of basically creating a plan. So we have all this information. Now, how do we practically apply that in our schools, in our homes, wherever your level of ministry can function? How do we apply that? If any of you have a youth pastor or pastors in your church, if you consider how that church started, there was a vision there. The vision was, all right, well, you know, I want to see a church built. Maybe my community has no churches. And the vision was that God had put on their heart was, I need to see a church here. For some of your youth ministers, well, I want to see lives transformed. For me, my vision for my community, for my Avenue C, my little block of space is, I want to see the Lower East Side transformed because it's a considerably poor area. I live near the projects. We have really poor public schools, totally underfunded. My church works directly with the school. All of our services take place in that school. And we're longing to see the transformation in that school where everyone is graduating, everyone is going to high school, everyone is moving forward. And the youth, that's all youth ministry to me. So it's not just about meeting on a Friday night, it's about what am I doing in my local community with the youth that are there. So that's the vision I'm casting there. And that's the thing with leaders. Leaders see vision before others do. That's the amazing thing about being a leader. You're bringing everyone into that vision that God has put on your heart. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the future. So good questions to start asking yourself. What are your visions for your community? What are your visions for your school? What are your visions for your ministries? If you're involved with a ministry, don't just start with it now. Maybe you're just involved. Maybe you're just a person filling up space on a Friday night, on a Sunday morning, or however it may be. You know, what is your vision for your level of ministry? And essentially, that's the thing. The first responsibility of a leader is to cast that vision for tomorrow. Proverbs 20:19. Is this the verse? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, the verse in different translations. Proverbs 20:19 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." A different translation says, "Where there is no revelation, the people cast off restraint." Where there is no vision, the people are unrestrained. Where there is no vision, the people run wild. This is like the more real version, right? When there's no vision, people be running wild. No, that's the thing. When there's no vision, when there's no idea, when you don't have a leader saying, you know, that's like if you had no government. People say whatever they want about government, but if there was no government, imagine how crazy it would be, because you have to think about all the things that are put into place under that level of order, under that level of vision that's being cast. So that's the thing in our ministries, we have to be conscious, even as student leaders, we're responsible for casting some type of vision. For some of us, it may be different. Again, wherever your ministry functions, that's the type of vision you have to cast. For some of you, if you have a thing in a school, for example, you were saying earlier, right, that you wanted to see a group of people changed. You had to meet them at their own need, and you had a vision to see that. Then you had 100 kids come. Like, was that something you were expecting? No, like, you go into it and you're like, man, I want to meet people and I want to see change in this way. You had a vision, and that's the thing. It isn't just for you. It isn't just for God Belongs in My City, people who created the walk. It isn't just for me as the youth director. It's for anyone who's a leader. That's an essential part of your leadership. It's kind of casting that vision into the future. And part of painting that picture is, what do you think the picture is going to look like? Well, if you have something that you've been wanting to do, and let's say it's something simple, maybe, what are some of the needs in your community? Anyone? What are some of the needs in your community? You guys in the front are mad talkative. What are some of the needs in your community? Go ahead. Just as a person in your community, how can you be a part of that change?
Have study groups?
Have study groups. That's really practical. And the funny thing is, when you have to formulate those study groups, if you're leading those people, you're living out the gospel of Christ. You're meeting a need that needs to be done. You're doing it in excellence because you're saying there's a need that needs to be done. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to get these kids together. And that's the thing. That's the thing about vision. It can become contagious because that study group is not just you. This is the group of people.
I mean, that's a good idea.
Again, can you repeat it?
If kids are not willing to study, then how do you make them do something that they don't want to do?
If there is a lack of willingness, how do you make somebody do what they don't want to do? And I do want to say one thing. You got to understand too. Sometimes it's not about bringing people and forcing people into something they don't want to do, as much as it is about kind of living your passion and making things available. Because that's the thing. Sometimes people don't, you don't realize you want to do something until you see someone else doing it. Like I didn't realize how much I wanted to play the guitar until I saw my worship leader playing, and I was like, man, I really need to get into this instrument. And then he taught me. He made himself available. Sometimes it's about making yourself available. If you see that that's a need, well, put up a sign. And if no one responds, no one responds. But even if you get one person, isn't that one life that you got to invest in? Isn't that one life just as valuable as the 20 that will probably come out of that? What were we gonna say in the corner? All right. So sorry, I didn't mean to not acknowledge your hand raise. Is the picture that you're painting in the future, is the vision that you're having, is it better or worse? So for your school,
It's better because it will enhance people's learning ability.
it's better because it will enhance people's learning ability. But that's the thing. If you're not casting a vision that's better than the worst, it's also kind of a courage thing. You got to be willing to say, I want to see this, but more than just, I want to see this happen, I'm going to be a part of this happening. So if I have to do a study group, I have to do a study group. If I have to start a club, I start a club. That's it. It's a level of courage that you kind of have to have in casting that vision. The mission realized, idealized, vivid, emotional, specific, and concrete. Missions, visions, things you cast, they're specific. So you know exactly what the need is, and you have to strategize and be conscious of how you can meet the need. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's about really identifying the needs and really start sometimes with the simplest idea of that. Not the most complex thing, because you could easily get into, well, my kids in my school aren't doing well, or they don't want to do this because they have bad home lives, and sometimes it's not about getting into that. It really has to be about in this moment, I can't focus on that. I have to focus on what Jesus called me to do and just focus on that simple idea.
And also, if somebody's having trouble in school, and if you have a study group, they might want to come because they get in trouble with their parents since they get no grades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing too. Being conscious of what's going on in everyday life. When you make those opportunities available, people are attracted to opportunities that they're not used to having. It's just the reality. So when you create a space, just like their group in the back, they're creating a space for kids to come together. They're meeting youth, for youth by youth with that concept. I don't know why this turned off. It doesn't like me. You guys are tough, man. My youth group thinks I'm hilarious. They're lying to me though, so it's okay. You guys tell me the truth, so you guys are all my friends. Who said that? I know, I believe.
Said what?
I appreciate honesty. That's honestly. I appreciate honestly. That's the thing. That's why I chose to work with youth, to be honest, because they are so real. They will tell me when they do not like my Bible study. They will tell me when they disagree. They will tell me when they think they're smarter than me. They will tell me like they don't care. And that's the thing. Like at that age, and that's the funny thing. In the Bible it says you gotta come to God as a child with that mentality. You gotta be curious. That's the thing with kids. They ask questions about everything for no reason. Like, why is the sky blue? But didn't you? You know what I mean? They ask the most repetitive questions, you know. But it's just because they're really curious. And that's the thing about questions. They don't just want to ask the question. They really want the answer.
I'm in that same class, but I forgot why.
It's because of the reflection of the ocean. I don't want to get into that. All right. So, in having the vision and casting the vision and seeing that there's a need, so you see the vision for the need and you see how you want to solve it. Now, create the frame for that vision. And you got to ask yourself this question. In the context of school, if school is where we're all spending the most of our time, how will our schools and communities be different at the end of 2011 because we started exercising leadership now? And I'm going to ask you guys to ask, but I'm going to unpack it before I ask you guys that question. In other words, how is your area of influence, wherever you guys live, your 10-block radius, your school, however many people are in your school, at the end of 2011, how is it going to be different because you weren't afraid to cast vision? Because you weren't afraid to live differently, because you weren't afraid to live in that identity that Christ has called you to. So any suggestions? Anybody see anything that they believe is going to be different? Anybody at the end of 2011 want to challenge themselves with making a commitment? To be a star. If you watch television, if you've seen at least one movie in the course of your lifetime, or if you watch the news is like totally filled with all this news about celebrities, which I don't know how that's news, but apparently it's news. So what does it mean to be a star as a celebrity? Powerful, influential. People look up to you. You're important. In the back, you got to be relevant. That's probably one of the biggest things with stars. You got to stay relevant, but you got to be relevant as long as possible. I mean, there are so many people I do not hear about the Backstreet Boys anymore. They are no longer relevant. Nobody listens to boy bands. Some of you don't even know who the Backstreet Boys are. I'm old. So, all right. In the back, constantly on the spotlight. And that's just, I would even venture to say that not just as a celebrity, but any star is constantly in the spotlight. In school, what does it mean to be a star? In some of your schools. You don't know the stars of your schools.
Everyone knows.
Wait, guys. One at a time.
I was back up on celebrity, sorry.
It's all right. Well, you can go say it now, and then the gentleman in back of you can go.
I was just saying keep it PC.
Keep it PC, politically correct. That's good. Athletes in schools tend to be stars. This girl's a star in the back with the white shirt. Huh? People who everybody knows? People who everybody knows? Everyone knows like the popular athletes in your school. Anything else? All right. In the hood, what does it mean to be a star? In the hood. I can tell, huh? Huh? You got the best swag. What does that mean? I need the New Living Translation of that statement. The best style. The best style. Maybe you got the best kicks. You got the best new hat that came out. You got the best swag. I don't know. I don't have any swag, so I lost my swag in the beginning of this class. All right. The Christ model. If you do have your Bible, can you open it to Philippians 2, which is kind of going to be our biblical launching point for student leadership. Philippians chapter 2. Anybody have it? Anybody have it? Everybody got it? If you can read off the slides, it's in the slides as well. All right, the Christ model. I'm going to read it just to kind of go through it quickly, but I do want to let you guys know, again, this is going to kind of really bring together this whole thing, hopefully. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded. having the same love, being one in spirit and one of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others better than yourselves. And someone brought up the point, it's really important as a leader to be humble. Because when you're humble, it means that the person sitting next to you, that even maybe you don't know them, maybe you're willing to be humble enough to introduce yourself to them. Because you understand that it's about relationship, right? That's the thing with this sense of humility that Jesus had. It wasn't just about Jesus, it was about everyone who he knew. How was he affecting everyone he knew? How was he becoming contagious to those people? Rather, in humility, value others better than yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, believing in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. And this is that the servant attitude we were talking about. This is coming straight out of the Word. This is Paul speaking about Jesus. Being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Which at that time, to really this question, how will it be different because you intervened in the violence in your school? Like, what are you going to do? How will people be able to graduate because you decided that you were going to do something? Like, what are some things that you can do? And Jeremy was posing this question earlier. But if these are the things you want to see, and these aren't really impossible things, because something like a study group can make a big difference for a small group of kids. But what are some things that you want to really do and that you think can bring practical?